This time on Tasting Misery. Kangaroo.
Leave Kangaroo Jack alone.
Hardtack.
It was symbolic of the blood of their enemies.
15 of the worst tasting.
What the?
Very thick. The grossness factor of it. Haggis.
That looks nasty.
Or worst to make. Hardtack.
Stop clacking them together.
With the clack clack.
God damn it. What's funniness?
Welcome to Ketchup with Max and Jose.
Why is it called Ketchup with Max? Oh!
Motorboating heals more than the brain cack.
You distracted me for a second. I was having a revelation. It's Ketchup with Max and Jose. Because we're catching up with it. I get it now, chat. Shut up, chat. I knew it. I'm not just figuring that out. Shut up. You don't know.
Though it's just me today.
Borger.
It's me, Max Miller. No
I
Jose
like Borger.
for the moment, but that's okay because this is really all about my going through past episodes. We're going to be talking about 15 of the worst tasting or worst to make or worst in some way episodes that I have done of tasting history. There have been like over 350 long videos, so this is the 15 worst. This time on Tasting Misery.
If humans not number one, I don't know what's going on, man. Humans are so bony. You're all bony.
So before we get started, I wanted to make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. It's getting really close to getting to 100,000. Not that close, but somewhat close. But the goal is to get it to 100,000. So yeah, help us hit that milestone. Anyway,
Are they at 100,000? It's 100,004, bruh.
Made a lot of food on this channel. Like I said, over 350 long videos plus another 100 and some odd shorts, and they can't all be winners. Sometimes it's because the recipe itself was poorly written. Sometimes I think it's just the recipe is not good. Sometimes it's my flavor profile or palette. I'm really into textures and weird textures. I don't like it. Don't like the dish. Sometimes it's because I screwed up the dish. And sometimes the food itself tastes fine, but it was not pleasant to make. So all of those could be part of this list.
Consume the
so
tea.
I have picked the 15 worst that I think. And we are starting with number 15, Melas Zomos.
All right, to jail. Someone get the chains. It's time for him to go to jail.
Spartan blood broth. So this video came out in October 2020, not long after the channel started, and really the flavor of the dish is not the worst. It's a little too vinegary for me, but it's basically a pork stew. It is more the look of it that is so disturbing. It is black because it's made with blood, pork blood, and it just is off-putting. There are a lot of blood dishes out there like dinuguan and whatnot, but I have a problem eating black or like dark colored foods, I guess. I don't know, just looking at it.
No one show him a steak. It's Spartan blood broth. They gave it to their men. Become drunk. It was symbolic of the blood of their enemies.
Is less than appetizing, but the flavor, it wasn't so bad. That's why it's number 15. Number 14, hardtack hash from steerage upon a
To jail with you.
Victorian ocean liner. Now this one is actually really recent. It was just a few weeks ago, and it was not good, mainly because it was absolutely...
Of course it's bland. Do you know how little seasoning people used back then?
Absolutely bland, and it just kind of turned into a mush in my mouth. It was so much harder.
Just add a little salt and pepper, and I'm sure it tastes wonderful.
Hardtack with so little anything else. And so it was a lot of work to make because I had to make the hardtack, and then it just kind of turned to mush. I actually had trouble swallowing it, not because it tasted bad, but because it was physically
Definitely didn't
difficult
suggest this just
to
because
swallow
Boka's
that
heart was
food.
one of the worst recipes.
Definitely.
I'll laugh because I'll be like, proof, proof, proof. You can't eat mine. That was just a fake dragon heart. Mine's
Deserves a
poisonous.
place on this list. Number 13, heart and mead. It was the Viking heart, the dragon heart. Obviously, it was not a dragon heart, but
Obviously.
this dish was all about texture.
Not
so
long ago, spices
I
were a
made
luxury.
it based
Exactly.
on a passage
And the hardtack dishes like that were for like the common folk. So way less chance of ever even seeing a spice.
from an old text where it talks about taking the heart, the dragon heart, spit roasting it with honey. So I just roasted this with honey, and that is not the way to cook heart. Heart can be very flavorful and can have a fine texture. This was not the way to do it. You wouldn't want to boil it, you wouldn't want to roast it like this. It really needs to be like sliced or slow braised. There are other ways to do it. It's just super tough. Also, when you get into it, there are like all of the arteries and just these different cavities that, oh, it's like rubbery and sinewy and just really unpleasant, and I won't be making that again.
Heart is not for me. I don't have the stomach for heart, it turns out.
However, it's one
Don't have the stomach for heart.
of my favorite episodes. I love the history that I talk about, the the Viking kind of mythology and dragons, and I retasted the mead. So I had made mead some months before. In this video, I retasted that mead after it had aged, and to this day, I get comments all the time, "Are you ever going to taste the mead?" And I'm like, man, I tasted it years ago. It was like 4 years ago. So I've like posted in all sorts of places, this is where I taste it, and people still miss it. That's okay. Number 12 was the spiced kangaroo from the Australian home
To jail with whoever made that.
front during World War II.
Leave Kangaroo Jack alone.
Now this one is I'm not sure what the problem was, because, so what I tasted, first of all, not the best way to prepare kangaroo. It was kind of a slow braise, and it just, that's not what this kind of meat needs. It needs like a quick sear and you're done. This was like a slow braise, and the spices just didn't really complement the flavor, and it ended up kind of tasting like dirt, gamey dirt. But the thing is, some people from Australia have said, yeah,
GY dirt.
that's what it tastes like.
Earthy would be the polite term to use, but I would actually say dirt. It kind of tastes like it fell in the dirt.
And then others say, I think you got a bad piece of meat. And it may have been a bad piece of meat. It had been in the freezer for a while, so it could have just been kind of off. And I'm honestly not sure. And I would have to get another piece to test it, but I'm not sure that I want to put myself through that. And it's really expensive. That little piece of meat was like $110. So maybe I'll wait until I go to Australia and give it another shot. And until then, it stays on the list.
But I don't like it.
Number 11,
I don't like it.
Kikion. This was all
What the? Why does it look like pink pudding? Next, you're going to tell me this is like throw up or something.
also one of my very early videos. It came out in 2020. I think it was August of 2020. And I just went back and watched it, and the style of the show has changed so much. I was much more like, I don't know. It's just different, totally different. But this is one of those dishes where it's kind of like the recipe is not a recipe. So I don't know if I did it right. I don't know if I did it wrong. Nobody does. It's a magic potion from ancient Greece. So it's kind of like, we know some of the ingredients, but we don't know really how it was prepared. But basically it's wine, Pramnian wine, which is really strong wine, cheese, and some barley. And so the way that I made it was kind of like a thick porridge. And it just, the texture was very thick. It was really wine and cheese like together. It was like salty wine porridge. And I really, really hated it. I just watched, and you could tell I really didn't want to this food.
Might have to mute myself.
So this one and the Melazomos, though, both made it into the Tasting History cookbook. This one, though, I kind of tested out a little bit more afterward to make a more pleasant version of the dish. And I do that a lot, you know, if something is going to go into a cookbook or whatever, because usually for the show,
just drank water too
fast.
fast.
At all. What the first time I'm making it is what you see, and that's what I taste. That's kind of the point of the show. And so, but for the cookbook, I'm like, other people are going to make this, so I'm going to put some work into like refining it and trying to make it a little more appetizing. So yeah, regardless,
Rice cracker. For those of you who hear the...
Weird. That's not good. That's not good at all.
Number 10, haggis. Now, I
Jail this man! Jail him now!
wasn't going to put haggis on this list because it's haggis, and so like it just already has this stigma because it's like innards boiled in a stomach of a sheep and everything. But the reason that I'm putting it on the list is twofold. One, it is one of the most laborious and expensive things that I have ever made because I actually had to fly to Scotland to do it, because it is illegal to make true haggis in the United States because it needs to have sheep's lung, and you cannot legally purchase or cook with sheep's lung. So I had to go to Scotland, boo-hoo me. But it was very hard to find a butcher that would let me come in and make it my way being I think a 14th or early 15th century recipe. And then that's the second part that was the issue with this. Haggis today is like highly spiced. This was not. It didn't have any spices. It just had some herbs in it, which add flavor, but overall it was just like this kind of grainy meat and grain, because it's like oats in it, this filling that had no real flavor. So it was a real letdown after all the work that went into it, all the preparation. And I could tell that the butcher who made it, who did most of the work, he was like, okay, it makes me feel better about my own haggis because it was just not good. But it was also one of the more fun things to make because I went with my brother, trip to Scotland with my brother, and met Bruce Fumi over there. And yeah, it was
Again, that's not the fault of the haggis. That's the fault of the time period. They didn't really have spices back then. They were luxuries.
Number 9, hardtack.
Leave hardtack alone!
And hardtack and hellfire stew. Pretty much anything cooked with the hardtack.
Stop clacking them together.
Actually, the hellfire stew wasn't that bad because it added in a lot of bacon grease.
You don't say.
Which is delicious. But the hardtack in general...
Stop! I'm gonna break if he does it again.
Takes so long to make, has no flavor, will break your teeth if you don't eat it correctly, and even when you do eat it correctly, it needs to be like soaked and pounded up.
Also, the reason it's breaking your teeth is because you need to take care of your teeth.
Up into a powder, and it's just completely, there's no flavor to it. So it goes on the list because it's such a pain in the butt to make. And I kind of painted myself into a corner because with the clack clack,
I'm gonna break if he does it again.
Became a meme. I started using it in videos and everything, so people are always wanting it, and I'm always wanting it. I think it's a fun dish, but makes it so I have to eat it more often than probably any modern human being should eat it. But you know what? Again, that's just kind of part of the fun. Number 8
God
was
damn it! God damn it!
Hildegard of Bingen's Cookies of Joy. Now this one pains me to even put on here because I love Hildegard of Bingen, Hildegard von Bingen. She is just an amazing woman and I love that episode. And it's also not fair to these Cookies of Joy because they're not necessarily meant to be delicious. We call them cookies, but they're not really cookies. They're like a wafer for medicinal purposes. So of course, you know, if they have any good flavor, it's going to be better than anything else, or better than it deserves. The flavor actually was just fine. I kind of wish that they maybe had like sugar, something to sweeten them, because it is just a lot of spice, but it was the texture. At first they're really crisp, like a wafer, and it's like, oh, that's lovely. But then it kind of turns into a gumminess, kind of just like reverts to dough in your mouth before you can swallow it, because they're not crisp enough to just kind of dissolve like a wafer should. So they were nothing that I would make again, and
that's why you're not super healthy. They're medicinal. You're probably supposed to chew them up and smack them on your wound or something.
That's why usually when you see them online, because there are lots of other places that'll do Hildegard von Bingen's cookies, they're not. They're basically modern cookies with some of the same ingredients, like some of the same spices, but then they just make modern sugar cookies, and that's probably the best way to do it, because the actual recipe, like I said, it's a medicine, but yeah, so you can't really blame blame them for not being so great. But I love that episode.
Do I wish that there was some sugar in there? Of course.
Number 7 is garum. Now I have made this twice. The first one, that was basically just unbelievably briny, salty fish water. So the second time, which took 3 months of preparation, and that's part of the reason that it is on this list, is just the amount of time that it took to make. The grossness factor of it. I mean, it was sitting in our backyard in a jar, literally fish guts slowly digesting themselves, and it looked absolutely god-awful. It smelled... It actually didn't smell as bad as I would think until I started straining it, and then it was like, poof. But part of the issue with garum is there were so many unknowns. I was unsure if it would work out.
That looks nasty. I'm gonna be honest.
The product would be what it is supposed to be, and that would be a lot of work to go through if it wasn't. But also, I was a little worried about poisoning myself, because it's literally just like rotting fish guts. It's not rotting technically, but essentially rotting fish guts out in the Los Angeles heat. And so I was a little worried tasting it that first time that I was going to give myself like botulism. But I had done lots of research to know how much salt needed to be added, so I didn't poison myself. And Sally Granger, who is an amazing food historian, specializes in ancient Roman food and particularly in garum, and she gave me a lot of information to be like, do this, make sure to do this so you don't die. Yeah, but it's a classic. I mean, garum, the first garum video is what blew up the channel. So, and then the second garum video did, unbelievably well. So maybe people just like to watch me suffer, I don't know, but
They do. If my chat is anything to go by, they do.
I think it's also just a fascinating dish. I mean, it's still around today in other ways, but nobody just eats it. It's not like a thing that you just eat. Some people actually did, but it's for cooking. And when it's cooked, it's fine, but like just the eating, It smells, it's really strong, and not my favorite thing in the world.
Okay, enough stalling. Here we go. Garum. Oh, I feel like that episode of Friends where Ross is going to drink the fat. It's just a vanilla milkshake with pieces of fish in it.
Number 6 was the tomato and peanut soup from the Great Depression school lunch. So
It's the Great Depression. There are no sugars and stuff.
this one, to me, this is my Tyra Banks moment. When I ate it, I was like, we were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. I wanted it to be good because I love tomato soup. I love peanut butter, and it was not good at all. Those two things did not go together.
Oh, those poor children.
I guess there are soups where they do go together, but this was not the one. The two flavors just did not meld. The two textures did not meld. It was like smooth and chunky, and it was kind of weird. And yeah, it just didn't. You couldn't taste the tomato. You couldn't taste the peanut butter, but you couldn't taste any new flavor either. It was just like, it was kind of weird. It's just, oh.
Wait, so like tomato and peanut butter cancel each other out in like a tasting profile? That's kind of interesting knowledge, though.
Oh, I was so sad about that. But in that same episode, I made these little cookies called Hermits, and those were delicious. So, salvation. Number 5, Spam Loaf.
I don't think anyone legitly eats Spam loaf. People in the 1950s were crazy.
Now, I'm not a big fan of Spam in general because I don't like really salty foods, and Spam is incredibly salty. So I didn't have high hopes going into it, but I've had Spam in times when it has been okay, like when it is cooked. This is very specifically not cooked, and many of the old recipes are not cooked because technically Spam is already cooked in the can. It is, in this case, first of all, oh my gosh, what a pain to make because it's slippery, and then it had this like middle filling in between each layer, and I don't know, there were like 7 or 8 layers. In between each layer, it was slippery because, I mean, it was like a cream cheese filling, and so it just kind of kept falling apart. It was a nightmare to make. I think I ended up making it several times. But then you eat it, and it's even worse. The Spam is cold and slimy and salty and horrible. And then they added more salt to the filling. I don't know what they were thinking. The 1950s were a wild time.
You're crazy people!
Yeah. It really deserves to be on this list, maybe even higher up.
That ain't it, kid. That ain't it.
But then we come to number 4, the 1950s, again 1950s,
Like I said, 1950s people were crazy.
fish pudding. And that is the first thing I believe that I made in this kitchen, not the one with the blue, but in this kitchen in this house when we first moved here. And it almost broke me. It was so, I mean, it was fish like baked in a casserole with eggs, and oh, it was so
I don't think
unpleasant.
eggs and fish
The
go together
fish
very well.
flavor was so strong, and it made the whole house smell of it, but it wasn't like a good fish flavor. It was rank. And then the texture of this pudding, and by pudding it's really kind of like it was more like a casserole, but it was like kind of jiggly and yet would disintegrate at the same time. And it was just super unpleasant. And again, 1950s, wild time when it comes to food. And I'm glad that we're not there anymore.
I don't like that at all. Oh, that does not spark joy.
Number 3, the jellyfish frittata or patina from ancient
Frittata!
Rome from the Black Banquet of Domitian. We're kind of sticking with the theme here
Of the 1950s? You don't say! You don't say! It's like I just told you! Nasty, crazy people.
of eggs and seafood, but instead of fish.
Many countries were still on rations. Yeah, I know. But sometimes you feel like they went a little too far in their experimentation. I know that history, Alan. I'm saying that they were crazy. Some of these combinations you should have known from the get-go weren't going to be delicious.
We've just leveled up to jellyfish, and I used, I think it was cuttlefish ink, maybe squid ink, but cuttlefish ink to dye it black. And we've already talked about how I don't like black foods, melosomos, and this was like a inky black. Eggs, I don't like eggs, like the texture of like cooked eggs, not my favorite. I'm also allergic to egg whites, so sometimes that's dangerous if they're uncooked. Here, I don't think I had a problem with that, but the texture was the main issue, not the flavor.
Looks nasty.
The flavor wasn't great, but because it also had like garum.
Here's the problem, Alan. The items usually separate, much better tasting, and give you the same benefits. You don't need to combine them.
That just kind of, I don't think garum eggs go well together. The Romans did. There are a lot of egg and garum recipes in Epicurus. Not my fave. But it was the texture of the egg and the texture of the jellyfish. I don't like jellyfish.
No one likes jellyfish. Everyone wishes jellyfish was actually where you got jam. No one wants to eat the jellyfish.
So the thing with the jellyfish is they are, they're wibbly, and then you eat it and they're like,
you still use meat and gelatin?
And then they just kind of like turn to water in your mouth. And so it's kind of the same thing with boba, and I'm not a big fan of boba, where it's like, and then you bite into it and it's just, I'm not a fan. Some people love it. Like, people eat it as a snack. I know several people who just kind of eat on these jellyfish tentacles as a snack. I hear that the hood is much firmer and not as bad, but I couldn't get the hood. This was all tentacles. But the thing is, they also don't taste, like, at all, really, I don't think. So I don't quite get the point of them, and I wouldn't have them again, I don't think.
They're... See if they... It's just so... It's a texture that I don't care for, is what it is.
I like how he's trying to be nice to the food. Like, he's like, poor food, it's not your fault.
I'll just put it like that.
Number 2, Kikatsugan. These took me 3 years to make. So that's one reason why they are on this list. Just the length of time that it took to make, especially because I messed it up a couple times and had to kind of restart from scratch. And then this was another case of we don't know what really they're supposed to be because the original recipe is so vague. It doesn't give us any instructions except to mix these ingredients and leave it for 3 years. The sake that I used was kind of a mid-level sake instead of a really nice sake. Some people said that that's why the flavor wasn't good. I don't think that's why the flavor wasn't good. It wasn't the sake's issue. I think you could have used the best sake. Still wouldn't have tasted good because most of it wasn't sake. Most of it was basically uncooked, like, flour of different sorts, like buckwheat flour and then other things, and then ginseng, which is super bitter. No good quality sake would have saved that. And then it doesn't tell you if or how to cook them. So it could just be raw. It could be steamed, it could be baked, it could be all sorts of different things. So I tried them in all the different ways, and none of them really, it didn't really make any difference. They all just tasted horrible. They were bitter and dry and like mealy.
I'm trying to think what you would do then. They're like sake balls, right? Maybe you steamed them? I'm trying to think how you would do that, and I don't know. That long face of I want to spit this out.
That I steamed were kind of squishy, so that somewhat changed it, and it did make it slightly easier to eat because the other ones just kind of like disintegrated into a powder. Horrible. Again, fun episode, but wow, those were not good.
So, it says to have 3 of these to stave off hunger. Maybe if you have 3 of these, you just don't want to eat anymore. That's not good.
And number 1 on this list is leather. Leather. I ate leather. I mean, how could it not be number 1? It's leather.
Cowboys also had to eat leather sometimes. You lost out in the desert, what you gonna do, man?
Made this episode, I believe it was in conjunction with PBS, and they were doing something about pirates, and they were like, can you do a pirate episode? And I'm like, oh, I've actually done several on pirates, but there is a story about these pirates who basically get stranded and then they end up eating everything, and the last thing that they eat is like their leather shoelaces. I could do that. And then I talked about all these other times in history when people have been reduced to eating leather. And so people have eaten this. It is a food source. It does have calories. It just doesn't have any, I mean, it doesn't have much of a taste. And you have to boil it for so long to even make it somewhat edible. And I say somewhat edible. You know when like somebody way overcooks a steak or pork or something and they say, oh, it's like shoe leather? It's true, because leather is like shoe leather when it comes to the texture. It is so chewy. You cannot chew it to the point of digestion. So I had to end up cutting it into the tiniest little pieces that basically I could chew a few times, taste, and then just swallow whole. And there was a lot of question as to whether the leather I was getting had formaldehyde in it or several other things that would have been very unpleasant to eat and ingest. So it took me a while to find something that I was confident in at least eating. And even then I was not entirely sure, but pretty confident. But yeah, it was the texture.
Formaldehyde? Oh dear.
It was kind of like the jellyfish, but so much
That commercial stuck in my head. Formaldehyde. Oh dear.
worse because it never disintegrated. There was no actual water in it. It was just the leather.
You know,
And
you could
so
be
it was
ingesting formaldehyde.
Oh gosh, it was really unpleasant, but it was a really fun episode to make, and it was kind of like one of those things where it's like, will people even let me make this episode? Am I allowed to do this? And it turns out I'm allowed to make pretty much whatever episode I want, because I'm the one who's making them. So I actually have 2 honorable mentions, and they're honorable mentions because they tasted good. But the process was so, this is tasting misery, they were miserable to execute. The first being the cockatrice. One of my favorite episodes. It was for I think it was for the first anniversary of the channel. So that would have been in February of 2021. And it took me, like, I had to build myself up to making this because it's a medieval recipe where they would create a new animal, a mythical beast, out of existing animals. And in this case, it was half pig and half capon, or castrated rooster. And I believe I used the back half of the rooster and the front part of the pig, but then on the other end of the table would have been the other way around, but I only made one. So I had to get a capon and like cut it in half perfectly. And then I had to get a pig and cut it in half perfectly and stuff them and then sewed them together, some like Frankenstein stuff, and then roast it. And it was just, and then you cover it in like saffron and egg to give it this golden color on the outside, and it just looks, it really is unpleasant to look at. It does look beastly, and it is supposed to look beastly. It's a monster, and they would make all these different monsters that you would then eat. Yeah, so, and then some people were like disturbed that I had done it. So there was that. But then also,
it was a recipe.
the video didn't do well. I had put so much work into that video. I loved the history that I talked about. I talked about like just interesting foods like throughout history.
Anyone ever had turducken? Turdunken's a good stuffed food.
And then it didn't do well. And even to this day, I think it just never really took off. So that kind of broke my heart. But it is what it is. It's one of those episodes where we're like, whenever we're gonna push an episode, we're like, go watch Cock and Trees. It's like that. Soul Cakes is another one. And then the other honorable mention is the one that I still have nightmares about, and that is sugar plums. One of my most successful videos, delicious. I was so proud of the final product, but they were so hard to make. The process was laborious. It took days, because it takes days to, like, you have to let them sit and then do it again and let it sit and then add more sugar and let it sit and add more sugar and gum arabic on the outside. And it was so messy because the sugar was melted with gum arabic, and so it's like stickier than regular melted sugar. And then as it's spinning in the candy coater, it's putting off sugar gum arabic into the air. You can't even see it. And then it lands all over the kitchen and it hardens into like this crusty film of sugar and gum arabic that took literally, I think a year later, I would like run my finger across and be like, oh, there's some still. It was just absolutely everywhere. The kitchen was an utter disaster. I thought that we would just maybe have to move rather than clean that kitchen. It was... I promised myself I would never make candy like that again. But then sometimes I'm like, do I want to make like M&Ms from scratch? There are so many of these old candies that require that kind of commitment. And I think they're so interesting. And they
I wonder what a
such
100
cool
gram bar
history.
takes to make from scratch.
Someday I'll forget. I'll forget the pain of making sugar plums, and I'll do something like that again. So that's the 15 worst things that I have made or eaten here on the channel, plus 2 honorable mentions. And I'm sure there are going to be more in the future. And sometimes they're my favorite things to make because they're interesting. Sometimes they're people's favorite things to watch because they like seeing me eat gross stuff. And
has he made a turducken?
Yeah, so let me know what you want to see for the next video if you have any ideas. And until then, I'll see you next time on Catch Up with Max and Jose. He'll be here next time, no doubt. See ya.
Missing reward, $3. Bruh. Well, that was Catch Up with Max and Jose, who is missing. Please fine for $3. For Duncan? Because that's what you call it. That was Catch Up with Max and Jose. Give him a like and follow if you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Give him a like. Boop. If you enjoyed me, give me a like and follow. Not that I care or anything. Smoke. Boom. Bye.